This is the third episode and we don't have a theme song, so I'm singing this silly tune. Oh yeah! And good tidings to all of you good people at home listening across the internet canals. This is the Minsk and Friends Speakeasy. I am Minsk.
Hey, it's Joonatan.
And we are pleased to bring you episode number 3 of our burgeoning little project here. So, this joke is not mine. Credit goes to Marcel Wickman, who goes by @UARRR on Instagram and other social media. But I'm going to toss this joke here anyway. So, what do you call two generic white guys with average life experiences and average opinions?
What?
You call it a podcast. Oh,
Ouch.
man.
Ow.
I mean, but if you guys are listening to our generic brand here, we appreciate that we happen to hit that sweet spot of...
It's like when vanilla isn't bland enough.
Yeah, then why not try the Minsk and Friends Speakeasy? Yes. Yes, but yes, thank you everybody who's listened to our first couple of episodes. I hope you guys enjoyed them as much as we enjoyed making them. Today should be another fun little look-see at a game that's currently hitting the charts. Before we jump into the main event today, I thought we could quickly revisit the topics of our first 2 episodes, because since recording, you have played through Final Fantasy VII, the remake, and I have played through Doom Eternal, so we have a little bit more perspective on those. We might do a proper episode as a follow-up on either of these games, but I thought we could just really quickly just give our thoughts on the final products here. So can you sum up really shortly what you think about the FF7 remake?
I kind of loved it. I was really skeptical, and I kept being skeptical throughout the game, because I kept thinking that there's a lot of changes to it. And I'm not a fan of all the changes.
Right.
But the more that I think about it, now that I kind of left it there, I haven't touched it for a week, because I spent like a week just playing it.
Right.
It's a long game. It's like, it took me about 50 hours to complete. That's
a pretty impressive length. Again, remembering how short the original game's segment being remade is.
Right, like, I went back and looked at my old save files on the PS1 game, and it took me, in the original Midgar, the entire portion took about 2 to 3 hours if you knew what you were doing. So, just how much they've expanded and put stuff into it, you're not going to get always 100% hits on that. But overall, I'm really excited to see what they do with this, because the stuff that does work is just fantastic. It's just really great, and there is, like, I don't know do you know Nomura Tetsunomura, the writer, what he has done, like Kingdom Hearts and stuff like that. I think we talked about this in the last episode.
Yeah, I know his work to some degree, and he was very instrumental in Final Fantasy XIII, which is kind of the least popular of the numbered ones, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, if you look up in the dictionary the definition of self-indulgent, they just have a picture of him there. He has not yet met a plot point that he didn't like doing, and they get carried away really easily. And there is the risk of that, and I think a lot of people are afraid that unless Square Enix really holds him in, that he's going to go wild again, and it's going to be another Kingdom Hearts 3. But right now, without knowing how many episodes there's going to be, how long we're going to have to wait for the second one, or anything like that, I loved it. I thought it was a great thrill to play through it, and I felt like a 12-year-old again, just exploring everything and doing all the things. And I mean, that soundtrack that they've made, it's completely reorchestrated, and it kicks so much ass, it's insane.
Okay, that's all great to hear, as someone who is still waiting on, I guess, that eventual PC release. It seems inevitable at this point.
I think they said something about like this Christmas or next January because they're essentially printing money with this. They're not gonna keep it as a PlayStation exclusive, especially now that the PS5 and the Xbox Series X are coming out. It'll come out like at the end of the year. That's what I'm hearing and what I would bet money on.
That's what I'm hoping on. I mean, I don't feel like there's really any point in me buying a PS4 at this point when the generational shift is about to happen. Well, I guess apart from it's going to be dirt cheap compared to the PS5 once that happens.
Oh yeah, I mean you'll probably be able to score a normal PS4 around 150 euros before the year is out, and probably even cheaper than that if you buy secondhand.
Yeah, I might almost fall for that if it turns out that FF7 isn't out for the holiday season. If for some reason it gets delayed, then I might spring on that.
Then you could play the Uncharted games, and we could talk about those because those are probably some of my favorite games of all time.
Oh yeah, I have some stuff to say because I have watched a couple of Let's Plays, but obviously I don't have first-hand experience. I guess I should actually mention that, like, a couple of games I recommended on our first 2 episodes, I haven't been transparent. I have not actually played them. I've only watched a Let's Play of a couple of those games. And I don't think my opinion is completely invalid, because you can form an opinion from watching a game. You can form some opinion about just by observing it. But it's true that it isn't the same experience as if I played them myself. So that would be the RE2 remake and Jedi Fallen Order, which we talked about. Like, okay, full transparency, I haven't actually played those yet myself. My opinions were only on what I'd seen watching a couple of playthroughs of those.
I would say at least based on Resident Evil 2, because I've played both of these games. I've completed them. I would say that RE2, you get the same experience just watching it as you do playing it. It's if you've played the original one years back, it is essentially the same experience, and it is very handholdy. So you might lose out on a couple of exciting moments here and there where you have to run away from zombies, but essentially seeing the thing and getting into the mood, you get the thing. It's a story-driven game.
Yeah, these ones are even more cinematic than the original, which RE2 was very cinematic for its time. It was kind of a new thing to have such a kind of story-driven action game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I don't think it's an issue at all. I mean, if you started like complaining about how the gameplay doesn't work or how it feels poor to play, that might be different.
Yeah, I wouldn't say the word feel. I hesitate to use that. I mean, even watching, you can some calls about, because you see gameplay mechanics, you can make some calls about how it appears to you. But that's true. Absolutely, the gameplay experience is the biggest difference. And fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, to wrap up, I guess I'll really quickly talk about having done Doom Eternal, and I'll keep this really short since we might make a episode on, since both of us have played it. I thought that game was absolutely fantastic all the way through. The one major problem I have with the game is the same one that I had with Doom 2016, is that despite how short for a modern game it is, I still feel like it went on a little bit long. There's a couple of levels towards the end where they could have tightened it up, especially once there's no huge new surprises in terms of gameplay and enemies introduced. I think they could have truncated it a little bit. But that's my only real complaint. The gameplay was incredibly engaging, and the story, what I talked about, there's also one really indulgent level which is really heavy on the story, and they could have chopped that up as well, actually. But beyond that, I like the implementation of the plot to that and this whole new lore that they're building in. And yeah, it's one of the best games I've played. I don't know, maybe ever. It's such an interesting experience in terms of gameplay. I'm thinking of. I haven't felt like this in an FPS, this kind of feeling of the intensity that Doom Eternal provides. I guess.
No, yeah, I agree with you. It's a great game, and I've actually gone back a couple of times just because I've had this feeling that I would like to go and have like just a quick excursion into that kind of ultra violence, and it's still holding up, and it's after the first honeymoon period has ended. I mean, it still feels like fun.
Yeah, it's I didn't go back on it because it really is intense. So like I was like, woof, okay, that was fun, but I need a break. So I actually haven't gone back to play it afterwards. But I have very few things to complain about the experience I went through. I enjoyed it quite thoroughly. It's been very divisive how complex the gameplay has turned, since the previous installment was a very, very very simple return to roots in a lot of ways. But I think the complexity for me was just a positive. Like it was an adding on top of the previous formula in a great way.
Okay, so you even like the Marauder fights?
Yes, my opinion on this guy, I agree that there should have been less of him. I agree with that with other people, but oddly, I'm completely the opposite of the rest of the internet. I think because he's so cool and that fight is so amazing that I think it's kind of diminished the I wish it was just a single character, is the thing. I want it to be like a rival character, and that's why I feel like it's diminished by having several of these guys show up. And I know that's like the complete opposite of what most people feel about the Marauder, but that's just what I was left with.
No, I would have been fine if it had been just a one-off. I just did not like them showing up all the time because it just broke the flow for me, where you can just run around and shoot and be like kind of like this unwieldy killing machine. And then with him, you just have I did not like having to time your attacks and be in a rhythm.
I get that. Yeah, it's no other enemy really acts that way except for one boss fight, which actually that one is my least favorite boss in the game, actually, which is funny because its mechanics is very similar to the Marauder. So I don't know what happened there, but I just immediately fell on the Marauder hype train when that guy showed up.
Well, cool.
Okay, but let's get to the actual meat and potatoes of today. We have been playing the latest in the Mount & Blade series, Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord, which is a surprise hit of this year, isn't it? The Steam stats have been really big for what's a really tried and true indie game, isn't it?
I guess, kinda. It's weird because it's not done yet. It's not finished, and it's really, as we'll get into it, it's really raw at the moment. It's really rough. And yet, at least, what was it, like 170,000 players in the first day, like 3 hours within release.
That's the stat that I saw. This is on Steam, which it's not available anywhere except Steam, right?
Yeah, because it's Steam Early Access.
Yeah, we should be clear on that. This is an incomplete game, not just in terms of it feels incomplete. It actually is early access. So yeah, but yes, 170,000 is the number I've seen, which apparently was the biggest release at the time of this year. And this is a year where a Half-Life game came out, for heaven's sake.
Right, but then again, that Half-Life game was for VR, which
that's the big caveat.
Yeah, like a percentage of gamers have. So I can see why that would not make that big waves around the internet, but like this actually being a hit is really surprising because I always figured that it would be an incredibly niche product, like that 170,000 simultaneous. We should probably emphasize there's simultaneous players.
Exactly, that's crazy.
That is crazy on any kind of level because those are like Red Dead Redemption numbers, and even Red Dead Redemption hasn't pulled that in quite a while now.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of nutty. This is the TaleWorlds Entertainment is a independent company from Turkey, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the only thing they've ever done in their lifetime as a company is the Mount & Blade series. So. And like you said, I know that it was like a cult hit, the original Mount & Blade. Well, more accurately, the updated release, Mount & Blade Warband. The first one was more of a proof of concept, but then Mount & Blade Warband was like, this is what the game's supposed to be. And it was very well regarded in PC gaming circles, but you always feel like that's a kind of a niche circle, like it's not a big circle, not something you'd think 170,000 concurrent people big. I feel that way.
Right. And I mean, you could tell that this was also the big project for them, because like Mount & Blade came out in 2008, and then Warband came out in 2009 or 2010.
2010, I think, but still, a decade ago.
Like a 2-year developer period. This one had 9 years of development. So this one has been promised since 2011 or something, and it's been just coming and coming and coming, and it's still not done.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. Like, it's still early access. They're still working on it, but we have a working early version of it, and it's janky, definitely, but it still works fine when you corner around the jank. Right.
And as long as you kind of know what you're getting into, as long as you sit down and you realize that you are playing something that is incomplete, essentially a beta, you will get a lot more out of it. And like, don't go expecting anything else right now. But that said, yeah, I've put about 20 hours into it right now, and I've enjoyed myself quite a bit.
Yep, I have half that time, so I have to admit I don't have the later game mechanics to comment on yet. Once you unlock kingdom building and more of the strategic stuff, I have not delved into that yet, so I can't give impressions on that. But the adventure portion, which I have been doing for 7 hours or so, is also has been very engaging.
Yeah, all that. I've gotten just at the kind of brink of building your own kingdoms. So even I haven't fully immersed myself into it.
Right. So this is an early impression, I guess, from us this episode. We can't really call it a thorough review in that sense, but we definitely do have thoughts to give about this game already.
Right.
So, how would we sum up, for someone who's listening this who doesn't know Mount & Blade, how would we sum up this genre of this game? It's one part character action RPG, but it's another part of kind of a Total War style tactical game. Would you describe it like that?
Yeah, but then on top of that, it's also got this really complex management system where you have to take care of diplomacy, you have to handle your, rations for your armies, you have to consider the political situation on an entire continent. So it's also got a little bit of Crusader Kings in there. It's a weird mix of everything.
Yes, and games like if you think about it's not fantasy, it's sci-fi, but something like Elite or these kind of where there's a huge world functioning around you, and you are a actor in this enormous kind of organic world. I'm not sure what that genre is called, but that's really basically what this is.
Right. And, I mean, those who don't know, we probably should recap a little bit about it. It's Bannerlord is set on the fictional continent of Calradia,
yes.
Some 2 centuries before the events of Warband. So it's a prequel to the previous game.
But because the story is very light, it's more about the setting and not so much about a strict story. You don't have to know what happened in Warband, per se. You don't have to know what the situation there is to appreciate this game.
Right, because it's all it tries to emulate history in the sense that kingdoms are rising and falling, and people are disappearing into and forgotten about history entirely. So you don't have to remember characters in that sense.
Exactly.
But it begins it tries to emulate the migration period in history, especially in Europe.
Yes, right after the fall of the Roman Empire, if we're talking about the real world, that period of Europe.
Right, and like the Choleric Empire is the one that stands in for Rome, essentially, and they have collapsed at this point. They are in a bitter civil war with the North and the South, and into this, multiple other factions, like Sturgians, Aserai, Hussites, and others are joining in, and each of them are like fictional representations of nations around the world.
Yeah, you have peoples from the early Middle Ages. You have like pre-Islamic Arabs here. You have Mongol and Turkic people. You have a Celtic theme, which I think that's a new one. There wasn't a really Celtic-themed nation in Warband, so that's a nice little addition on top. And I'm missing someone.
The Vlandians and the Batanians, I think, but those...
No, the Batanians were the Celtics. The Vlandians are kind of Frankic Normans. They're kind of who filled the vacuum after Rome collapsed in Western Europe. And and then there's, of course, the Viking / Rus people themed Sturgians.
Yes.
And I think what we should also make clear is that although this is a fictional continent, this is not a fantasy medieval game. This is very historical minded game. There's no monsters, there's no magic. It's just peoples, and there's not even a lot of animals here. There's horses and livestock.
Right. And one of the things that this really does well is it really just drops you into the deep end of everything and just says, here's the world, you figure it out.
Yes, so this is one of those games where the plot is kind of half like built by your actions and half like what you interpret out of it. Like the actions you do in the game are completely directed by you, since you have so much freedom, and you kind of, it's up to you to like form this story in your mind of what the course of this character who you're playing as is.
Right. Yeah, it's to put it politely, it's thin.
It's thin, but it's like, I think it's also partly by design to allow for all that like freedom to design your own story.
Yeah, I mean, there's the basic starting point where you go on a quest of vengeance because your family or your parents have been killed by raiders, and that starts to essentially takes you on this big quest that then takes you anywhere essentially.
And that I did appreciate, that there is something of a main quest. It's a very loose main quest. It's fill these objectives to build your clan, but that provides some structured work on. I am terrible in a game where if a game is like you have the freedom to do whatever you like, I have a terrible time figuring out what to do. I'm very uncreative on that front. So some kind of structure in some goals to do, like work towards this, is something that I do really appreciate, and that's cool that the game gives those in Bannerlord.
Yeah, that's true, and I agree that that's something as vast as this. It's really needed, because like another game that is not exactly like this but has the same kind of thing of just plunking you into the big world and telling you to survive is Conan Exiles.
Right.
And that has the thing that doesn't have any proper kind of storyline to push you forward. It's not. That's
just a survival game in its core, isn't it?
Right, but it does have a story in it. It has lore. It has a big story, but you have to go looking for it. You have to go finding it and like exploring these things that are not really marked really well for you. And every time I started playing that one, I've just it's happened what you just described. I've just kind of lost into the hole that I don't know what to do. I'm just going to sit here and build a hut, and then I'll be done, and I'm not going to touch the game again.
And a boring hut with only the essentials, right? That's kind of what I fall into in a game like this.
Right, but then here, since every town you visit and every kind of place you go gives you another place to go to. You meet new people who will tell you about a new quest, or they will tell you, they'll give you something that it gives you a reason to go forward. And that is really necessary in this kind of a thing, because if it was just a simulation, I don't think I stick with it.
Yeah, I concur on that. I just don't have the kind of mind for a pure simulation, like you put it. Now, that said, I do still. One thing that starts the game that's annoying is that you apparently start the game at the same spot every time. You get to choose which of these nations we've talked about your character is from, but it turns out you're an independent mercenary and you always start at the same spot, which thankfully is kind of in the middle of the map, so it's easy for you to go. Relatively easy for you to go where you want to on the map, but I was like all primed to become a Battanian hero starting out in the forests of Battania, fighting for my homeland, and it turned out I had to play for a couple of hours before I even got back to my homeland. That was kind of a curious surprise for me.
Right, and I think this is one of those things that hopefully will be addressed in as the game is developed further, as it is done, that it'll hopefully, because the actual character creation is surprisingly deep. They ask you all kinds of questions about your childhood, so you get to kind of imagine growing up into the adult age that you are when the game begins. You're always the same age as the game starts.
Right, yeah.
But you get to imagine a character history that is nice and deep. And I'm hoping that based off of how the rest of the game plays out, that this is something that they'll get back to and hopefully start the game differently. Because I put emphasis on my character being the son of merchants, a really savvy trader, really just a smart guy who leads by essentially money. And I was a little bit disappointed, like you, that it just starts you right there, regardless of what the scenario is, and you just have a sword in hand, and you have to go. Yeah. It would have been much cooler to start in a, based off of that beginning, like in a city, and have to work your way from there.
Yeah, I can see that. That would be really fun to take into account your choices in character creation, because now it just basically is, and then you became a mercenary, and now your siblings are in trouble, and then you work from there, which, I mean, sure, it's a combat-heavy game, so you're encouraged to make a character that goes towards that trajectory in life. But still, it came out of left field for me that, now I'm just here in the Empire, which I'm not even sure if I'm friendly with. Huh.
Right. And it's the thing that it's not even a combat-heavy game towards the end. Because the moment you start gaining wealth and reputation and power, you can essentially just outsource all of the fighting to your essentially your warbands, because you become a Bannerlord, you become a king of your own, or like an empire of your own making. So you can like get your own captains and your closest confederates and or confidants, and then send them to lead their own armies. Like I'm at the point in the game right now where my character essentially rules from his tiny kingdom from across the map, and I have multiple war campaigns happening in other places that I haven't even seen, let alone checked in on, because they are handling it themselves.
Oh, that's really funny. You've delegated your war, and it's super impersonal to you in some sense, because you don't even know what the stakes really are, because you've never been there. That's funny. The organic storytelling. I kind of dig that.
It is, and it's fun because then it gives the game this meta aspect of you. Because I've also tried to make it so that instead of like that, I'm not going to go and run around myself to different towns anymore. So I'm relying on messages that come into my city with messengers. So it creates this organic sense of a world that is constantly evolving around, and I can only hear about what my actions have done to it based off of people either coming there and swearing vengeance on me or asking for help. And that's one of the best parts to the game so far for me, because it has this opportunity. And I know that our friend who has played this like over 100 hours by now, who we actually played the multiplayer with during the weekend, he has decimated every single other kingdom in the continent.
Oh, wow.
Right, so he has gone the exact opposite way of just like going from town to town and waging war and doing a scorched earth tactic.
Oh, he's not like even kingdom building so much as he is just this roving engine of war, I guess.
Yeah, and like, an army of hundreds, if not thousands, just going and destroying everything. So it's really interesting that you can play it in so vastly different ways, and the game will not punish you for either way. It'll actually just let it happen and see what happens then.
Yeah, that's in these kinds of games. That is a lot of the charm, is the kind of dice roll of what your choices do lead to. You hear about the choices matter thing a lot when people talk about games, and I think it more refers to a lot of like RPGs with like deep side quests with a lot of choices. But then there's this kind of choices matter where it's a sandbox, it's a roll of the dice. You can affect a change on the world, and it can be wildly different from what someone else is doing in their game in that world.
Right.
So the world, yeah, as we talked about, it's a very fun to wander around in. I'm at the mercenary stage. I've just sworn fealty to a king, so I'm not a ruler myself. I'm at the funny stage where I'm hanging out with my lord's army, so I'm kind of getting bossed around by him, which is also an interesting twist. Before that, I was doing the questing adventurer type, which is, like I said, it's fun to visit spots in this world, and like I said, for me, the lack of writing plays in my own mind starts filling in, like, well, this town is like at this pass on top, so this must be a strategically viable like village for this kingdom as it protects the approach through the mountains here, and this is a coastal town. Oh, it's so cool when you go into town and you can see the actual coastline there when it's a village close to the ocean, and you'll find people with problems to solve. They have basic quests to do, and they're not those side quests I mentioned earlier, Witcher 3 style quests with pages of dialogue and well thought out like story, but they're a very organic situation of a world with world and people who have problems, and you have the means to solve them, and that's fun, definitely, but I think you are pressed into advancing in what you do, because at least at the moment, the game does start to repeat itself a little bit with these stories. With these quests, for example, like I said, they're not handwritten quests, which means that they're randomly generated, which means that you start seeing the same plot line a couple of times. Like, I've done the Family Feud quest 4 or 5 times, and I hated it the first time, actually. It's my least favorite quest, and I certainly haven't warmed up to it later, which is where I have to escort the son of some family to solve a blood feud in another town, or they'll kill this kid. It's a little weird that every town seems to have the same problem of one kid getting carried away and killing a neighboring town's dude, and I gotta solve it. I gotta help this kid out of trouble.
I actually got so frustrated with that quest the first time that I got to it that I ended up raiding the town and razing it to the ground when I got back from the quest.
I guess that's a solution. I didn't think about that. I had an even worse experience on my first go, because I ran into the first major glitch that I've had in this game, because I picked up that quest, then I rode off to do another quest, a gang fight in a big city, and my character actually got KO'd. So for some reason, that counted as a failure in the Family Feud quest, and it said that, oh yeah, now the kid's dead, and the dad's furious. Except the character is not dead, he's still in my party, but because he counts as a quest character, I can't get rid of the asshole. I just have this I have this one permanent idiot sidekick now just filling up one slot in my army. And I got now 70 people in my army, so it's not like one doofus here and there really changes anything, but it's so frustrating to see this one dork who I can't level up. He's permanently stuck at level 1. I could gear him up if I wanted to, but I really don't feel like. He's always just there reminding, hey, I'm still here. Yeah, I suck.
Can you take him into combat and put him on the front lines or something so that they would kill him?
See, because he's a quest NPC, he only ever gets wounded. Maybe it's because I chose that my character... You can choose if your character dies or if your character is wounded in the like difficulty selection. I haven't checked if maybe that also affects him, or is it because he's a quest NPC? But in any case, he's always back with 1% HP, despite getting totaled in every fight he gets into, because he's a level 1, like, dork.
Damn it.
Now, on the other hand, that is a funny story. Like, I have this permanent sidekick, Leroy Jenkinsing it up, but boy, did that sour me on that quest line to have, like, this load stuck in my party.
Yeah, I can see why that is. I think we should mention we haven't actually painted the picture for people who have not played this game, which must be most of the people listening right now. The game itself takes place on a overhead map, which is you see it like almost like a civilization map. So it's you're seeing it from like a god's eye point of view.
Yes, an overhead shot.
Yeah, and everything in the world is simulated at once happening in the world. So you constantly have this little feed telling you who declares war on who, what is happening, like has a war party been dispatched elsewhere, or is there like a new matrimony between two kingdoms that has, brought them peace.
Yeah, there's like policy changes. That's like really funny. It's like the people voted to make this change to the law, despite a significant back push or something like that. There'll be these funny like little political notes. It's
right. So it's constantly happening, and like the game simulates the time so that like time passes in like I think a few minutes is almost like a week in terms of the game. So it goes by really quickly. The idea is that the story takes place over a period of decades, even.
Mm.
And when you get to a town, you can choose: do you want to go into the town, or do you want to go into the castle or the big city? And then then you actually get to play in third person or first person on your choosing your time in these places, and then it actually generates this entire town for you to explore. And then if you end up in fights, all the characters, it's not just told that there are hundreds of people and then you see only two. You actually see hundreds and hundreds of people at once fighting each other if you get into a big kerfuffle with another war party, for example.
Yes, that joining the king's army, as I mentioned, was an interesting step up, because thus far it had been me and my merry mercenaries of 50 to 70 people dealing with various crews of about equal size, and suddenly I'm part of a 500-headed army besieging a castle. I was, wow, that's really cool the first time you get into a big fight like that.
Right, and there's siege engines, and there's archers, and there are realistic units all over the place, so it has a really wonderful sense of scope to it. It feels really big.
Yes, from the tiniest engagements to actual armies clashing with 1,000 people. If you really, really want to crank up you can artificially limit the amount of people per engagement in the options, because it is demanding on the computer to simulate that many people. But if you so choose, yes, 1,000-headed conflict can be actual, with you actually there, boots on the ground, watching it unfold.
Yeah, I think the biggest one I have seen so far has been around 600 or 700 people. And already that was really wild, because I was there in the front lines on my horse, and just seeing, hundreds and hundreds of arrows flying across the map while horses are galloping towards one another, and people are shouting at the same time. And it's really something else. It's one of the best things that the game does, and it does it really well.
Yes, you can tell this is kind of what they really wanted to work on. I mean, well, that's, I guess, the like we said, the overworld and the mechanics of this empire, this continent, are also have a lot of thought put into them. But the simulation aspect of the battle is, you can tell that's where a lot of the love went into. The combat is, you're this one guy. The combat is like a lot of these medieval third-person or first-person combat systems. So Chivalry or Mordhau come to mind. You control with your mouse your direction of slashes. You have a shield that you use to block enemies. It's a serviceable combat system, although the angle of attack that you have to choose with the mouse I found a little tricky at times, because it also controls where you're looking, at least in my setup. So while I'm trying to move around, it'll switch around the direction I'm attacking. That's the main problem I have at the moment in combat in this game.
Yeah, I think it's weird in the sense that after we have now praised how the combat looks and how the feeling of it is, actually playing the combat is, to me, not a lot of fun, because it is really janky, really unfinished, and you can tell that this is the same system that they had 8 years ago, with only the minute updates to it.
Yeah, I don't remember if there was kicking shields or shield bashing in the previous. I really remember Warband very poorly. I never played that very much, but it doesn't have a lot of difference when I look back on Warband, when you look at the combat in just a single-person combat level.
Right, and after that we've had Chivalry, we have had Mordhau, which have really taken up the medieval combat simulators up a notch. And even they're not great, they're okay. But I feel like that they already did a bunch of the stuff better than Mount & Blade Warband did, and certainly better than what Bannerlord has done right now. So again, here's hoping that because we're in early access, that this is just the rough draft of the combat system.
Some kind of sprucing up there would be nice. Of course, I think part of it is that the large-scale combat and your commanding of it, again, maybe is a little bit more of what they wanted to focus on, I feel, because there is, like I mentioned about the whole real-time strategy aspect, there is a controlling troops element to this, especially once you start to have a bigger army, more men to command. And that I do find interesting, is your role as a commander. You're moving around troops. Like I said, it kind of reminds you of the Total War games, where position of troops and smart movement and everything is very key to winning a combat. It's just that you're now on the perspective is now right there on the ground, rather than you having a bird's eye view over the battlefield.
Right, yeah. And I mean, again, as mentioned, you can just delegate all your fights to other people and never go on the battlefield yourself unless you just want to go and watch.
Yeah, so I'm not huge on real-time strategy games. This one is weirdly engaging. I guess there's something about the scale of it. But yes, there is indeed options to just delegate all of this if you just want the kind of management aspect, which, the city building, civilization-y, or I guess SimCity style building, you can eventually focus on that. Of course, you do have to work towards that. You don't start with that kind of gameplay. Like I said, I haven't even reached that yet, as I'm still a budding mercenary captain myself.
Right. I think really combat only becomes an issue if you mostly play the multiplayer.
Yeah, I guess we could touch on that, which we never did talk about back in our Doom review, but I don't think either of us cares about the multiplayer in Doom all that much.
Well, not a lot, no. Doom itself is kind of like, why even multiplayer? But this one, I played a lot of the Warband multiplayer.
That's actually the same with me, not Warband specifically. I liked the Napoleonic Wars mod. I ended up putting the most time into that. There was something amusing about a very different type of warfare than you see in most other games. But yeah, the multiplayer can be fun. Certainly we enjoyed our time testing it out.
When it worked.
That's maximum jankiness there, I guess. Just the connection issues and whatnot.
Yeah, and it was also weird that we did not see that many European servers going up while we were playing.
This was a Sunday afternoon, and wasn't any European holiday as far as I'm aware, but still, we had trouble finding a big server to play in, the bigger game modes, which was kind of odd that
And like Sunday afternoon in the middle of a quarantine when all the gaming numbers have gone way up for every game, and it was still tough. Like we could there were a lot of Oceania servers and there was a lot of North American servers, but Europe was kind of empty.
Which is doubly odd because the European setting you think might appeal to local players, but maybe the exoticness of it appeals to people more abroad. I don't know.
Right, and having said that, once we actually got into the game, and once we played one of the three major multiplayer modes, they were a lot of fun. And they were especially a lot of fun with friends.
Yeah, there's three kind of major gameplay styles. There's basic team deathmatch, which is exactly what it says on the cover. It's just you beating up people on the other side. I don't think that's particularly special. Did you feel anything about that?
No, it's not that one is easily the least memorable one, because if you wanted that, you get a better experience playing on your own in the single player campaign.
Absolutely. I don't know if some weird happenstance you got two teams which both were really in sync, maybe, but you're going to be playing with randos online, and then it's just going to be a giant fracas. But then we have we have siege mode, which is you have a castle, one team is defending it, the other is trying to breach it. It uses the same mechanics as sieging in the main game, except that all the people on the field are players. That one is pretty fun.
That one is actually my favorite mode of the three. Because that is... it's not there yet because of the early access, but I have such good memories of playing Warband, where the mods, once people had modded the game, and once you got the player base kind of had settled, you got these, big 300 versus 300 siege servers.
Ooh, and yes.
Those were the best things. So now having 100, like 50 versus 50 player servers, they're fun. But they're mostly fun because of the promise that this is only going to get bigger and better in the years to come as this gets, fixed and modded. But right now, that is still great because you have people working together. You have the great experience of either defending castle walls or scaling them. And it's a lot of fun for me. That's what I've always liked in these.
And there's fun mechanics for both sides, as you have siege engines to operate on the attacker's side, and you've got all sorts of fun tools to defend, like dropping rocks through murder holes and other fun stuff on the defender's side. Definitely could maybe spruce up more tools for the defenders at the moment, I think.
Yeah.
There's way more siege engines to play with than defensive options, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, in the single player, you already have a lot more of the stuff like that you can you can use the catapults on one side to break down walls to create new entrances. And that's not in the multiplayer yet, but that's something that, at least based off of what the previous games have done and what the developers have been talking about, that is going to come into the multiplayer as well.
Now, Siege was the second favorite mode for me because although the spectacle of it is cool and all that war machines and stuff, I did feel it felt chaotic, kind of like the team deathmatch. I felt like there still wasn't a lot of cohesion when playing with randos online. It's a lot of people running and doing their own stuff without a lot of cohesion there. So I would have maybe liked, maybe as an alternate siege mode, something where there's like squads with roles assigned and commanders and sub-commanders. Something more structured, like a battlefield game, early battlefield games, which would have squads and roles and stuff. That I think would make Siege work better as an actual team effort, rather than now it's a deathmatch with some objectives and cool props around this castle, is what it felt to me.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, but then, again, this is all... It's such a weird game to talk about because all we're talking about is potential and what it can be and what it will be. So right now, yeah, I would agree. It's kind of hectic, but I'm also in the weird state of being both nostalgic and hopeful that it will get a lot of the stuff that Warband had and will become more clear in its presentation.
Yeah, I feel that, and I don't have the nostalgia writing for this, since, as mentioned, I only ever dipped my toes in the original Mount and Blade. So for me, the third mode was actually the most engaging of these multiplayers, which is Captain Mode, which is, it's 6-on-6, I believe?
Yes.
Yes. However, the ticker is that you have a squad of NPCs to command there, and you get to use the same commands as in the single-player version to, like, move this band around. And I don't know. I said I'm not big on strategy real time, but something about managing this one squad in concert with the other players I thought was really neat. It's capture the flag, basically. There's 3 objects to capture on the map, but there's something really, really unique about operating a total war troop, basically, a single troop with all the other ones commanded by your friends, and you trying to figure out your overall strategy with these units. I thought that was super neat, the games we went through.
I agree. It's a fun mode, and I think my only major hang-up on that is entirely personal, in that I'm still learning. I'm not very good at the whole hanging back and playing your part in big strategy things. I like being on the front lines. I like going in and kind of exploring and kind of figuring out how different actions affect even the multiplayer experience. So I have little and limited patience when it comes to just wait here with your archers, or wait here with your shield guys, and that's your part. You are the shield wall. Admittedly, again, the game got a lot better once there were, because we were playing with 4 people in total. So one big clan, and each of us were commanding different aspects of the troops. And at that point, it did get a lot more fun because we were very much in sync and everything moved really quickly. But this is something that I think is probably just not my kind of cup of tea, based off of just what kind of a player I am.
I feel that, and it's the one difference between this and the other modes is that there is indeed so few players, whereas with the other ones it's the grand spectacle of so many people playing at the same time. Whereas this one, it's of course an illusion, since the grand majority of soldiers on the field are NPCs that are being commanded by a single player, 1 out of 12. But in terms of simulating a actual engagement in between 2 medieval armies, I thought that multiplayer mode got the closest to that, rather than it was more immersive than the other 2, where I really palpably knew that I was still playing a game rather than an actual simulation of 2 armies. I think that's what appealed to me in that, in addition to, again, just kind of figuring out how these units should work together. That's the thing that appealed to me in there.
Oh yeah, and I'm sure that this is something that's going to get better over time, and also when I get more used to the thing, and once we go back and play it together again and with other people, I think it'll grow on me. It's certainly not a bad mode in any way, and certainly the people who play it tend to be a little bit more mature than the ones on the public servers that we encountered. Oh
yeah, that's a lot of the very typical stupid drivel, I guess. I'll be blunt.
Yeah.
And nonsense trolling that didn't get a lot of that. Just pretty clear discussion about what to do if someone did speak up. I think it is better to play with people though, so it's much easier to coordinate. I don't know if I'd like it as much if I just popped in with 5 other randos that I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, as with many things, this is something that's only going to get better over time. And that actually brings me back to, it'll be very interesting to see as down the line, who knows if it's, in a few months or in a year from now, when they integrate or they put in the the co-op mode into the main campaign, the single-player mode.
Yes, that's what I was really looking forward to. I'm a little bummed that we don't have that yet. I love that kind of co-op PvE, and this world would be really fun to explore with a friend, I think.
Oh yeah, I mean, once that comes in, that's going to be its whole own review, because I can see that the co-op mode is going to change the single-player experience entirely, and that's going to be something that I look forward to immensely.
I'm a little curious about how some stuff will be implemented, like if one player bumps into a combat, what does the other player do in the meanwhile? Is it going to be somehow forced that you have to travel together in some sense? I don't know. It'll be interesting, but I think it's worth it just because I think it would be so fun to adventure together in such a nice sandbox as this game is.
Right. It'll be funny to see if it happens that both of you go off on your own quests and then you meet up in the middle and both of you are trying to solve a family dispute where you have to go and get the dumbass son from being killed.
Oh my god, what if we run into and we've got sons of opposing families? Won't that be confusing? Is it going to end up with us beating up each other? One of us has to succeed and one of us has to fail. Oh no.
Hopefully by then we will have a lot more in terms of missions and storylines in the game, because those are also something that will change.
Yes. Definitely it will need more content, even though there is plenty at the moment. And indeed, once your role changes from pure adventurer to more of a kingdom builder, there'll clearly be something else to do. But definitely I do want some variety eventually to be added a little bit more in the content. It will at some point become a lot of the same, won't it?
Oh yeah, eventually it does. But that's with any game that has this kind of ambition to it, because it is trying to do so many things. Eventually it will trip over itself just because of that.
Yeah. But yeah, like we said, it's definitely not terrible, at least in the first 20 hours. There's still stuff to do. There's still stuff to enjoy about how it all unfolds.
Right.
I guess we should be wrapping up real quickly, but we haven't really talked too much about the presentation except how fun the world is. But graphically, it's a really nice looking game, I think. The world and the environments are fun to wander around in. Even the towns that you don't necessarily have a lot to do except talk to NPCs. It's still pretty. It's still a cool world to view in my mind.
Yeah, it's fine. It's nothing like I'm running it on maximum settings at all points, and it's nothing spectacular to write home about. But for a game as big as this, and of course, because you have armies of 600 to 1,000 people fighting amongst each other, you can't expect it to look remarkable, because it would kill your computer. You would have to have a 5,000 euro machine to run it, even on the most basic of settings.
Yeah, I mean, I was already having that. Some of those 500 plus soldier armies, I did have to pull down the graphics, which had been, I think, medium or high up until then, because my computer was starting to chug from running so many individual NPCs.
Right. And I mean, it's one of those things that I'm happy with lesser graphics if it means that it's more immersive based off of just what there is. And right now there is a lot. So, yeah, it works. And the soundtrack, actually, we should talk about that. The soundtrack is great. It's really good. Yeah,
it's Finn Selinger, I think I looked up, was the composer for this game. It's a lot of really good medieval tunes. There hasn't been any standout song for me yet that oh my god, this is so cool. I haven't noticed yet, but it's definitely really good, really immersive, very mood setting, the music in this game.
Yeah, all the other stuff, then the UI and just the general how the game plays and works, I think it's probably best not to even go in there yet, because all that is placeholder. It's not done. You can clearly tell that there are still some things, and there are some menus that have not been even remotely finalized. So it would be unfair to start, kicking them while they're down or while they're trying to put themselves up right now.
Yeah, that kind of is the eternal problem with an early access game, isn't it? That you know you know that it's going to be unbaked when you get it, and you do want to like hold out for the final version, but there's always that kind of, are they going to fulfill the promise? That little question mark hanging over you as you engage in a game like this.
Right.
But I'm confident in TaleWorlds Entertainment, if for nothing else, because this is their baby, you know? So I'm feeling positive about the game in its current state and about future developments for it.
Right, and it's one of those things that because it has such a vibrant modding community around it, it will change, and it's going to be, even if it's not based from TaleWorlds, it's going to become more interesting over time because of what people will do to it. And that's one of the rare games that you can say about that.
Yes, that's true. The modding potential in the original was great, and it's even greater in this one because they've implemented modding.
And they're going to be releasing that. They're going to be releasing the mod tools that have been overhauled entirely. So all that looks really great and really interesting.
Right. So yeah, this has massive potential. Kind of like back in the day when Half-Life 2 came out, and everyone was gaga, not just for the game, but for all those modding tools, all the possibilities it would open up.
Right, and we got Counter-Strike from that. So,
yes. Well, that was Half-Life 1 already, actually. But...
Oh, right. Was it Team Fortress? I think Team Fortress is what came out of...
Jeez,
or was that Half-Life 1 as well? I can't remember. Time has gone so quickly.
Yeah, Team Fortress is pretty old as well. I know. Gosh, well, now that I'm scratching my head, what came out of Half-Life 2? I know back in the day I was following, like, mod database daily to figure out, what's the big mod that's being made at the moment. But, now I'm blanking out on what the big mod for Half-Life 2 was.
Right.
Curious of that. Well, why don't we end it here by quickly gushing about what we'd like for mods in Mount and Blade 2, because everyone's always excited. The one I always see is people hoping for a Song of Ice and Fire conversion where you get to ride around Westeros. Do you have anything of that ilk that you'd like to see modded into Mount and Blade 2?
I am going to be a traditionalist and say that I would like to see Lord of the Rings done well, because there are so many amazing battles and amazing locations in Lord of the Rings that would make for incredible Mount and Blade mods. Like, can you imagine like Helm's Deep or the Pelennor Field battles?
With Mumakil in there?
Yeah, or like the Battle of the Five Armies. That would just be really cool to see in Mount and Blade.
Yeah, I have to. I think I'm gonna go with that same answer. Like that's the obvious one. It's the most famous in like fantasy warfare, I feel. Outside of, I guess, if you jump into Warhammer, I guess a Warhammer mod would be fun too. But
yeah, that would be. Or then, like, if we could do like filmic references, I would like somebody to bring like a full-on Hidden Fortress, Throne of Blood, or Rashomon, like, or Ran, Akira Kurosawa style, you know.
Yes.
Make samurai war, the wars of that period, but with the color and the, you know, beautiful art and everything that came out of it. That would be really cool to see.
Yes, that's actually very neat. Or leaning into Chinese history, maybe get Dynasty Warriors, but it's not ridiculous anime. It's actually realistic warring states. Wow, yeah, that's good stuff too. Huh.
Yeah, no giant crabs.
no enemy crabs. I don't think the mod could handle that historical accuracy.
No, game just won't start. There's just like a warning messages going like, I'm not doing this.
Yeah, oh boy. We'll do too much massive damage on that one.
Yeah.
All right, well, I think that's going to wrap it up for today. I guess in summary, it's a very good-looking game thus far, and I think we're going to enjoy playing it and seeing how the developers build up on it.
Yeah.
I think we'd recommend this to people, yeah?
I'd say so, because at least, you know, then if you get it, you have a game that is going to be around for a long while. It's going to be supported for, I mean, Warband was supported until a few years ago, and it's still got a modding group around it. So it's definitely going to be a game that will give back its, value.
It is still pretty niche, despite the surprise amount of Steam purchases, so I would maybe recommend checking out some streams of people playing this. It's being streamed a lot still, so maybe do that before forming an opinion. It is, some of it can feel a little odd about the gameplay, even though we're gushing about it. It's such an own beast, this game, but no, it's cool in my mind, and I think it can provide a lot of entertainment, this game, for people.
Yeah, and there's a lot of... TaleWorlds does sales really often, so if, in doubt, you can pick it up at a sale pretty cheaply.
Yeah, that's our final. Check it out, is our final verdict. So, thank you for everybody today for listening in on our latest episode and our musings on Mountain Blade. We're going to be closing out now. Jonathan, would you like to hype up anything you're working on lately?
I think my next big ones are going to be, I have the article on this game. I did a big essay or a sneak preview on this game, which delves a little bit more into all the mechanics and all that. But then I have also stuff coming out on Fallout 76 and the new Wastelanders expansion that came into it.
I'll be interested to hear about that one.
Right, I'm now just jumping into them about half an hour into the game, so we'll see how that one goes. And then as the summer comes in, we have Chivalry 2 coming out.
Oh yeah, speaking of this theme, yeah, that should be fun. So we might look at that as well. You never know.
Yeah, how about you? What are you doing?
Oh gosh, I'm actually doing the same thing that I was doing a week ago. Tales of Vesperia is the game that never seems to end. This is a very long JRPG. So over on my channel, Minsk and Friends, you can still look forward to Tales of Vesperia and the recently started Assassin's Creed, which actually is weirdly one of my favorite series I've ever recorded. I'm still shocked that this old kind of early concept of Assassin's Creed game is this engaging for me. Kind of funny that, but...
Was this the first one or the second one?
The first one, the very first one, the one that's Altair in the Middle East.
Well, that's one of my favorites. It's really great.
Yeah, I'm surprised, because everyone always says that it's kind of a really basic game, and they only really fleshed it out in the later ones. But so far, it's fun for a simple game like that. I'm digging it.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks again, and we'll see again what's next on the docket. It'll be coming to you sooner rather than later, folks, so don't worry about that. But for tonight, we are signing off. Goodbye, everybody.
Good night.